When and where were you born?
I was born in Jamaica, 1978, at a hospital called the University Hospital of the West Indies.
Who were you named after?
I'm not sure. I think it's some English bloke, as my mom would say. And I think the middle name is of an uncle of mine.
Where did you live and how did your family come to live there?
In Jamaica, you mean?
Yes.
Before we moved to the place where I grew up, they lived on the southern end of the island. They rented. And all the stories I've heard from my parents about this is that they had a rough time growing up. And eventually, they changed jobs, went back to school and so on. Then they moved to the northern end of the island, to a different place, and that's where I grew up, a place called St. Anne. Most people would know it as, or know the most infamous place, the most famous part of St. Anne as being Ocho Rios. Sarah was brought up near Ocho Rios.
Who did you grow up with and what was it like?
I grew up with two siblings and my mom and my dad in the house. It was a nuclear family, and we were always aware of other siblings, but in the home that we lived in, it was just the three of us kids, my mom and dad.
Well, what did you and your friends do for fun? Did you have a favorite hangout spot?
We loved playing football. Okay, before high school, it would just be my brother and I who would play in the yard. And the only hangout spot was at school. So my mom was very protective. So the only place you would go, or we were freely allowed to go, was a couple doors down or up the street to different neighbors, school and church. So when the neighborhood kids would be playing ball, we weren't allowed to go. And in truth, it was even more sheltered for the girls, because the girls had to stay in the house. And then when I got to high school, then we were allowed to play more outside because we were in a different neighborhood, and I think my mom felt more comfortable with us going out to play, and she saw the necessity of it, of us interacting with different kids and not just being sheltered with church and school.
What goals did you have as a teenager?
Early teenage years, I became very aware of how short life is. And that has been my guiding light. So my goal has always been to live life to the fullest, within reason, obviously, with that in mind. And so a part of my life was spent trying to be what I think my mom wanted me to be, which is be a doctor, be a lawyer. Because in Jamaica, they had this famous saying, I think I saw it on in an Asian commentary earlier, that you can be anything you want. You gotta be a doctor or a lawyer. So that was either it. If you're not a doctor or a lawyer, then you're really nothing. Oh, and the next thing was a bank manager. So part of my early years was spent chasing somebody else's dream. And then after that, I realized, okay, I gotta figure out some other stuff that I like. So I picked up different sports and other interests. And now my overarching goal has not changed much, which is to enjoy as much of this life as I can for as long as I can. And be kind to people.
Who was your hero or role model growing up?
Father. Father. My father, for sure. He never said I love you until way down in my life. I think I was the one who said it first, but he always showed it. and you and I spoke about this before, I think, that the way how he would show love is he would read something that's interesting and then pass it on to me. And then that was his way of saying, I love you. I found something good, so here you go. And I just remember as a kid, wherever he was going, I was willing to go. Where are you going today, Dad? And he's going to go to somebody's house to fix something. Yep, I'm right there. I'm hungry, I'm tired, but we're going. The thing I liked about him was that he always had something interesting to teach or some story, and he was a wonderful storyteller. And he wasn't much of a listener, though. Sometimes he would just listen just to answer. But it was so much fun talking to him, I didn't mind it. And in truth, I didn't have much interesting to say back then because I was brought up in a time where kids were to be seen and not heard. So I didn't spend much time developing who I was until later on in life. But I love that about him. He was a great storyteller. He always wanted to teach you something, how to live life better. And he would talk about his past, and I would ask him some things he would be sheltered about, some things he would volunteer. I loved his stories, and I couldn't wait for the punchline of a joke or to hear the next line of a story that he started the week before, that kind of thing. Some of my favorite moments with him were when I would find an excuse not to go to church at night, and we would stay up on the porch at night eating food. That was really nice. Or on a Sunday, when I'd again find another excuse not to go to church, we'd watch nature videos, right? And as much as it was annoying that he would promise that we're going to do something, like go to the beach and so on, because we live basically steps from the beach, and he would say, we're going to go to the beach, and it maybe happened once in our whole lifetime. In fact, I have one video of me taking him to the beach. One picture, I'll show it in a second, if I remember. But that was annoying. However, it's almost like the other parts of it were so fulfilling, I didn't mind that annoying bit. But he was always my biggest mentor, my biggest champion. He would always call me the smart one or something like that. Whatever word he would use or accolade, it always gave me hope that I was a champion. And even when I felt like I was a dummy, I could hear him in the back of my mind saying, no, Colin, you can do it. I believe in you. And that was amazing. That was amazing. And so that's why he is and continues to be my mentor. I don't know if you call it a mentor because he's passed away, but somebody I look up to. I always say if I could be half the man he was, I'd be a good man.
Based on what you've said, would you consider him the most influential person in your life?
For sure. Not even a question. Influential because he showed me a lot of things. And the intentionally and also unintentionally. So some things he didn't do. For example, I mentioned that he would make promises. And I remember how annoying that was, that he would say, we're going to go to the beach. And he would always find something would come up and we wouldn't get to go. Well, I learned from that I shouldn't make promises I don't intend to keep. So I determined when I have a kid that if I say I'm going to do something, I try my best to do it. But the other things that he showed me far outweighed the annoying bits. That's the only thing. It's not really much to complain about. But I try to model my life after him. He was very organized. It's almost like he was in the military. His clothes are always clean ahead of time. He was always early. He had this saying, I'm going to try to get it right. If you try to be on time, you're going to be late. But if you try to be early, you're going to be on time. That was his motto. He wasn't late for anything. And I try to live like that. So whenever I find my place about to get disorganized, it's almost like I can hear him, or I could see him walking around, not in a weird way, but I see him walking around putting things in its place. And so I try to live like that. So even years after his passing, I still sit and I think about how he would have handled certain situations. The other thing he has influenced me with is his calm demeanor. And I remember going out with him, and the trip the trip was supposed to last, let's say, half an hour. But because of how friendly he was, it would take 2 hours, because he would stop 15 times to talk to 15 different people. And he would stop in a supermarket and he would speak to a ham sandwich if it would stay still long enough. And I found that amazing. Annoying at the time, but I still think it's amazing now. So I try to live like that also. It's not always welcomed in the era where I live. People think it's weird. But I think it's much better to be like that. I mean, we're nothing but social beings. And being sociable, it matters more than anything else in this world, I think.
How did you feel about going to school?
All right. Before high school, loved it. High school, most of it I liked. The early part of high school I didn't like because I went to high school really young. I started high school when I was 10. I think you started when you were 14? Okay. So when I was 10. So I wasn't ready for all of what was going to come to me. And I was still a little kid trying to act like a little kid amongst grown people. But it didn't take me long to find my stride, and it was easy because I just found other, I'm going to use this thing I don't like to do, weird people that I like to hang out with, and we found a way to belong together. And so till it became that we weren't just weird, but we were the in crowd because we were so bold and confident in who we were that it didn't matter what others thought, right? I wished I had paid more attention to education though, because I went through school just to have fun and not knowing that it was important to, or not even being aware that it was important to pay attention to schoolwork. College years, I started to take it seriously because now I realized I have to be taking care of I will soon be taking care of myself, but pretty soon, so I gotta figure this out. And then ever since then, I've been trying to study different fields, you know. Went back to school for different things, learning videography, all that kind of stuff. But overall, I had a favorable, I really like school. Overall, I would say. Overall, I like school. For sure.
What was your favorite subject at school?
Physics. Physics. The reason why, am I saying why? Should I say why? The reason why is because physics explained everything. The reason why this chair doesn't collapse has a lot to do with physics. The reason why this light is hitting my face and then hitting the camera and someone can see it on the screen, physics is a big part of that. And it was amazing how there's so much of the world can be explained through physics. And this is why I liked it. Now, back in the day when we learned it, there were no labs. It was all in theory. So you had to imagine life in the abstract. You couldn't see gravity, obviously. You couldn't see different forces. We had sparse resources to experiment with these theories that we were learning. But it was so much fun. We took their word that when they say more mass gives you more force, oh, that's amazing. And you just think about it. I would think about it over and over. And that's why it was my favorite subject. I didn't like reading. I didn't like literature. So even now when I see certain books or certain passages, it's almost like they're speaking a different language because I didn't pay enough attention to it. I think it's cool though. I really think it's cool. Wordplay is interesting, but I just didn't take a liking to it. Now, unlike my father, he read a lot, and if he could choose if he could say what his favorite subject was, I'm pretty sure he would say, no, he wouldn't say literature. He would probably say something in the science also, I think. But physics, I like physics for those reasons.
Related, but for someone who claims they don't read a lot, you have a very eloquent manner of speaking. And two, is that why you teach read physics?
Say again?
Is that why you teach read physics because you liked it in school, or just because?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for saying that. I can comment on that. So growing up, we had 2 ever-present books with us. I think you and I spoke about this too. One was the Bible, and the other was a dictionary. And my mom always prided herself in speaking the Queen's English, because she would tell you 15,000 times how she spent some time in England and so on and so forth, right? Something to do with the Queen, I don't quite remember the details. And my father always tried to learn a new word. So whenever he learned a new word, he would come and ask me, hey, you know what this word means? And he would never let me get away with saying, yes, I know it. Because if I said, yeah, I know it, he would say, all right, what is it? Tell me. And so sometimes when I would fumble, I'd have to go look it up. And even though we were brought up in Jamaica where the dialect is broken English, I witnessed my mother and father switching back and forth between proper English and broken English, depending on who they were talking to. Right? I thought it was fantastic. So if my mom was speaking to her peers, depending on if it was her boss, she would speak in proper English. My father was speaking to students, or if he was speaking to his peers, proper English. But if we're speaking to the neighbor, they would switch back and forth. And I saw how that gained them respect in the neighborhood. And I like that. And so I try to emulate that right now. Even though I still have my strong Jamaican accent, I try to speak properly without filler words and so on. But thank you for noticing.
Mm-hmm. Who are your friends in school? Tell me about them.
Who were my friends in school? One friend his name is Corey. And a funny story about, he would tell the story better than I could. The story goes, I don't know if you like this part, but he had a big gut as a kid, and we were both 4 or 5 years old or something like that. And his shoelace was untied. Did I tell you the story? His shoelace was untied. We're still friends this day. I went to his wedding and so on. And according to him, and I vaguely remember this, I offered to tie his shoelace because he couldn't tie his shoelace because he had a big gut. And from then on, we became friends. So we went to the same school, the same colleges, and not deliberately, but it just happened that way. And another friend I had still is, his name is Athlone. We were all in the same neighborhood. And the reason we became friends, I remember one day we're coming home. He was in a grade higher than I was. And I remember him, he was not quite opposite, but he was a popular kid. And I wasn't very popular at the time. But he treated me as if, he didn't treat me like I was an outcast. I thought, man, that's cool. I didn't have to do that, but we just started hanging out since then. What I like about those two friends and other good friends I have is that I can depend on them to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. I do have at least another friend who agrees with me more than anyone else, but that's because we think alike, and we tend to bring up conversations that we know we already agree on. But most of the people I call friends, if not all of them, are people who I can depend on to give me the best possible advice I can come up with, unsolicited or otherwise. And this is why we remain friends decades later.
Was there a subject that you found particularly difficult other than literature?
Chemistry. So while I was pursuing this goal, I'm not trying to make my mom look like she was a helicopter mom either. I don't even like that term. Or that she was forcing us to do it. It was more of a societal expectation. The part of the path that led to being a doctor included passing chemistry. All right. Well, the difference with physics, math, and chemistry is that at the time, the way how I viewed it, and I kind of still view it that way now, physics, you only needed to understand the concept. You can figure it out, right? If something is heavier, it's going to give you more force. Something's moving fast, it's going to have more force, and so on and so forth, right? Chemistry, I just looked at a periodic table and I thought, man, why do we have so many different letters we have to memorize? And it's just a lot of memorization. And I didn't pride myself in that at the time. And so this is why it was an arduous task. Every time I had to go to chemistry class to learn something, I just thought, I'm never going to remember any of this. And so I flunked out of chemistry class and I didn't become a doctor. But it might have been for a good thing, but who knows?
Who's the earliest relative you remember? And tell me about them.
Outside my nuclear family.
Yeah.
Earliest relative. I wasn't a relative. Can it be a neighbor?
Yeah, that counts.
Okay, there was an old lady who lived next to us. Her name is Auntie. We always called her Auntie. I still think about her. And her house was next to ours. And her house was a one bedroom house. And she had an outdoor bathroom and an outdoor kitchen. And the bathroom was uncovered. The kitchen was covered. And so she had chickens all over. She had a mango tree and a naseberry tree, another fruit tree. June plum tree and so on. She had, the way she took a shower was different from where she used the facilities for bowel action. That was covered. But I preferred to use her facilities more than ours. The idea of bathing outside, I mean, now it's all the rage, I guess, but back then it was looked down on. But I liked it. And the other thing I liked about Auntie is that there was never a time where I would go over there and she would say, I'm busy, I can't talk to you now. She was just an older lady, have her own things she got to worry about. But I would go over there just to talk to her, ask her about her life. I don't remember anything about it. But I would go over there and I'd ask her, hey, do you have anything you want me to do? And most times it would be to thread some needle for her, right? Because she had trouble to see the eye of the needle to put the thread through it. And so I'd sit there and listen to her, or she would offer me some food, love that. And so she had these chickens. And so she would cook these chickens and they would eat it. So one day you would see the pet chicken and next week it's on the plate. But Auntie was always welcoming. And she took pride in her environment. She kept it clean all the time, never smelled. It was always neat and smelled fresh. And I like Auntie because she was always friendly. I think she's not a relative, but closest to a relative that's not a relative.
What was one of the happiest moments of your life?
Ooh. I already know what it is. I'm trying to find a second one. There are so many. All right, I'm going to say the second one first, and then I can give you two?
Sure.
All right. The second happiest moment of my life was when I met this girl that I really liked. We were late teens, 17. And at the time, I was so carefree that I didn't think she would be interested in me at all. I just thought, I'm just this jovial guy, I'm just going to be funny. At the time, I had jack-o'-lantern teeth. And she was gorgeous. And she gave me her number. And I never forgot it. Thinking, what are you giving me this for? And I called her, and we were in a relationship, almost married. It was amazing. All right. Well, that can be chalked up to puppy love, I guess. But after that, the part that stood out to me was when you were born. When we found out that your mom was pregnant and you were born, I started preparing from that day. I would read to you in her belly almost every night, every chance I get. I would talk to you, touch her belly. And the minute you were born, and I remember I slept in the room with your mom. I tell you a story? I slept in the room when your mom was in labor. Right next door. I was on the computer the whole time doing work, but you were crying, as babies do. And so I was recording. I can't find that recording now. And you heard my voice and you stopped crying. Now, it could just be you heard some sound, you're trying to figure out what that sound is. I like to remember it as you recognize my voice from reading to you in your mom's belly. However, that joy has carried since then. To watch you grow up to a beautiful, smart young lady, I am a very proud father, for sure.
How would you say the world has changed since you were young?
Oh, less sociable. People are more lonely. There are more people on the planet, but there are more lonely people, which is incredible. I don't understand it. I mean, I can understand it, but you've probably heard this 100 times. Social media, computers has separated people. So you might have, I'll tell you a story. So if I was on the bus in Jamaica, doesn't matter which bus, by the end of the journey, you would have at least 4 or 5 new friends. Today I see people on a bus and no one's talking, which is incredible. I'm not used to this. If you're in a neighborhood, for example, where we live right now, by the before the year is out, everybody knows everybody, and you can go to somebody's house, send your kid there, and so on. And here is in America, at least the society we live in now, also in Jamaica, you can live in a neighborhood or a building for 20 years, and nobody knows that you're inside. Someone could pass away in their house, and nobody checks on them. I don't understand that at all. There was a story of a lady who was in a bank. Was it Chase Bank? I can't remember the bank. Did you hear the story?
Yeah, and she dropped dead at her desk and no one noticed.
And no one noticed, right? That is the epitome of that right now, I think, encapsulates our current environment. That someone could be dead at their desk and nobody noticed for 4 days. I think that's a travesty. And there are a lot of lonely people that don't have friends, and they're going through life and they don't know they don't even know how to make friends. And I feel bad for the younger kids, because the younger kids believe that if they just put on a headphone and they're in their own world, then just this distraction should be enough to sustain them. And it's not. There's nothing that is more fulfilling than a nice evening with some friends or with some family. There's nothing better than it. If you can find 3 or 4 good friends to hang out with, good clean fun, it's amazing. No song can replace that. None whatsoever. The other day I went out, like I think you were there, right? Remember I said it just took you? I went out with my friends to play tennis, and we had such a good time. It was amazing. So I don't like where we are right now at all. But I'm fortunate that I came to America at a time when I had friends already, and I already know how to socialize and make new friends. Still not easy, because sometimes I try to make new friends and it doesn't quite work out because they, for whatever reason, they're too busy to engage in friendly activities. Regardless, I already have enough friends that I more than enough friends that I need to sustain me through the rest of my life. But for sure, it has become a more lonely place, which is not ideal.
Why did you immigrate here, and what were some of your experiences and maybe difficulties of beginning life in the UK?
Where do you get these questions from?
Give us a document, and I picked up the question. We're
Okay.
working out harder. I'm not gonna come up with new questions if I don't have to. Why would I reinvent the wheel?
That's a good questions though. All right, I came here because of your mom. We met in high school, and you know this. We met in high school, and we were together for a little bit off, and then came back together. Then she moved here, and I came after. We got married, and we came after. That's why I came. Some of my experiences, it was a shock of how unfriendly America was at the time. That was a big culture shock. I remember once, I think I told you the story. I was working at a hospital, and one of our coworkers was unwell. Did I tell you the story? And so he got admitted at a hospital someplace away, right? And the way how I was brought up, if somebody is unwell, people take turns to go look for them. So I just came to America, and we're working together, and he got admitted, and I went to go look for him, right? This was, I don't know, 15 years ago, 14 years ago. And he basically said, "What the Christ are you doing here?" He couldn't understand why I was there. And that was a big culture shock to me, because in Jamaica, when someone's unwell, everybody takes turn to go look for them. And in fact, it was a sad thing if no one came to look for you in the hospital, because that means you either are a bad person or you have no friends. This is just how it is. So that was one of the things that shocked me the most of being here, how unfriendly the place was, and how people would claim to be friends, know your private business, but they don't really care about you enough to follow up, or to even lend a helping hand or encouraging word. So it might seem like everything is all negative, but not really. The way how I was brought up and what I currently see here, it's a far cry from each other.
What accomplishments are you most proud of?
That you know what make me most proud is that I have been able to lead by example. So, okay, when my parents tried to show me things as a kid, I didn't always get it. And quite often, like any kid, I rebelled and did the opposite, right? But what I was proud of is how they still did what they're supposed to do, the things that I did right. They did it regardless. So eventually I came around and started doing the right thing, because it's natural for every kid to rebel, people to rebel, right? But what I'm most proud of is that I have been leading by example in a lot of ways. And I think every parent can just wish that their kid learns from that. In your case, you are way smarter than I ever was. And that's not to say it's because of me. I'm just saying I am glad that you don't see me doing certain behaviors or having certain behaviors and try to emulate that, right? So that's what I'm most proud of, for sure. That's what I'm out for. Any other achievements? I mean, nothing else really matters. Degrees don't matter really. Money doesn't matter as much. The only thing that matters is the next generation and how you're leaving the world. If you're going to leave it a little bit better, you know, that's the only thing that matters really.
Have you ever experienced discrimination?
Not really. Not really. There have been times, I mean, the usual stuff, okay. Sometimes I'd go into a store and they would, okay, like the other day I went I was at a hotel and I was waiting to be seen next to order my food, right? And the lady kept accepting more people past me until I got upset and left, right? And that wasn't discrimination based on race. It was just discrimination based on whatever snap judgment she made of what I look like, right? The reason why I say not really is because people will find any reason to treat you differently. And I try not to focus on that. My only focus is to be the best version of myself every day. And so I don't look for these opportunities. I know it's out there, but even if someone's trying to project that towards me, I don't pay much attention to it, because quite often they are coming from a place of insecurity. So I'm aware of it, but maybe it's because I don't take it personally why I say I haven't experienced it. But no one's called me derogatory term or treated me in a way that made me feel subhuman. So I just try to be the best version of myself, and I lean on the people who I care about and that care about me, and I forget about the rest. And like multiple times you and I have gone to stores to buy something, and because I'm just like a bum, they don't pay much attention to us. But that's not discrimination. I guess it kind of is, but they're making snap judgments, right? In which case, I just take my money and go somewhere else, right? So this is just how it is. I can tell you a funny story. You want to hear a funny story? So when I was buying our first car, I didn't know anything about credit card and all that, right? So your mom and I, mom was, both of us in healthcare, so we're doing all right. And so we saved up at the time, I had $18,000 in the backpack. I know. And so I had on a hoodie. Now I look back I look back and see how silly it was. So I have $18,000 in the backpack. I got my typical, I think I had my typical hoodie on and so on. So I go to this dealership. I tell you a story?
I think you might have.
And I say, hey, I want to buy a car there. And he says, sure, let me get the paperwork, because he assumes I'm going to do like a credit check and all this stuff, right? And so when I hauled out the money, the wads of cash, he basically kicked me out. Now that wasn't discrimination. He probably thought, who walk around with $18,000? This is 15, 14 years ago, right? So at first back then I thought, man, he doesn't like me because I'm black and I have an accent. Not really. He probably thought I'm a drug dealer, right? So I use it as a lesson to say, don't always assume every slight is based on discrimination. It might be rooted in the person's individual experience. So I don't look at every interaction through the prism of could this be discrimination.
Do you want to talk about hobbies or anything like that?
Hobbies?
These last few questions kind of boring, so.
Hobbies. Excuse me. Hobbies. All right, so I got a bunch of hobbies, and the reason I have these hobbies because I'm insanely curious about different things, and the hobby that I'm most curious about now is anything to do with cameras. So I like videography and photography because both of these devices attempt to freeze moments in time. So this recording will be around for as long as it will be available digitally until the internet blows up or somebody deletes it, which is amazing. You take a picture of someone doing something, and for example, let me get this picture of my father, 1 second. Here we go. This picture of my father, right? So I remember, I think I told you earlier that he always promised to take us to the beach, and he never did. Maybe once he took us to the beach, maybe twice. And so as soon as I could, I took everybody to the beach. It was a fantastic day. And let me see if I could put it here. And there he is. And this moment is now captured in time. Of him at the beach with water bottles. He's trying to give everybody water bottles, and we had KFC, and it was a beautiful day. And there he is, fit as a fiddle. And photography is important because it freezes these important moments in time. And this is why I like it. Whether it is something joyous or not so joyous, now there's a permanent record of it, or at least semi-permanent. But this is my most treasured hobby or interest right now.
You own a couple film cameras. Do you prefer film or digital, and why?
Digital. Film is like, it's more of a toy, but digital, if I'm going to take a picture of something serious, I wouldn't risk it on film. I'd go digital, but you know.
I think that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. You're welcome. Nicely done.